Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants, guys, want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. Go to trustedamerican.com to see how much they can save you today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
That's right. Welcome to the show, guys. It's off field and it's Friday. How the hell are you guys doing? I'm Nate Jackson, Brandon, Krisztal, and Liv Moods. What's up, guys? How are you? Yeah, you looking fabulous with your fur and your Von Dutch. Haven't seen Von Dutch in a while. It's kind of stood the test of time.
It never left.
Did it not?
In my house. Mm-mm.
Because
I
that
love
was actually popular when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. Liv.
You would have to, or you could rotate Von Dutch, Ed Hardy. You could go back and
Right.
forth.
Do you have any?
I do love Ed Hardy.
You do?
Of course you do.
Wow. See, as much as you make fun of us for the old school stuff, those are like
Yeah, because we never
2000s.
talk about fashion
Well,
from
you
when
know
you guys
what?
roamed the
That's
earth.
true.
Jinko jeans.
Jinko.
Mm-mm.
Jinko. Yeah. What about?
Seven
Hey, do
jeans.
you remember Z Cavaricis?
Of course.
True Religion jeans were what
Yeah.
I
yeah.
wore when I was like younger.
Yep. All right. So,
Yeah.
hey, we're talking football today.
Yes, we are.
Denver Broncos have a big game on Sunday. But that's not the only story going on in the football world. What's on your mind right now, Brandon? I know Travis Hunter is in New York, about to take home the Heisman. What are the chances he doesn't bring home that trophy?
Feels low. I understand some football people, or just whatever, football fans in general, including our pal Shelby Harris, think Ashton Genty should take the hardware.
What's Shelby's reasoning there?
That he's had a better overall season because look at what his team has been able to do. I imagine if the Buffs played in the Mountain West, their record would also be better. I think Boise's lone loss came courtesy of Oregon, who's the number one team in the country. But he's doing something, Ashton Genty, that we've seen a bunch, 5 or 6 times since 1980, including Barry Sanders' year. We've seen running backs have years like that didn't win the Heisman, including Melvin Gordon, who had, I think, more yards in less games and right around the same amount of touchdowns and didn't even win it. Travis Hunter's doing something that we've never seen, period. He's played 400 and something more snaps than the next player. An idea that anyone else would have played even that many snaps is pretty crazy. And he's been outstanding on both sides of the ball, and he's collecting the hardware. In fact, our pals at EA Sports put this out there, and then I reposted on Instagram. This is since last week, because he got the lot impact trophy a week ago.
Wow.
This is what he's picked up so far, including, I believe, yesterday when he was named Walter Camp Player of the Year, Chuck Bednarik Awards for the best defensive player, Paul Hornung Award, the Bolitnikoffs for the best receiver. Obviously, AP National Player of the Year is pretty straightforward. So he and the other 3 candidates, which include Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward from Miami, and Ashton Genty, they're all in New York. Tonight they'll do some stuff where they get to meet the past winners. Tomorrow night is the ceremony, and they do a brunch Sunday. It used to extend all the way to Monday night with a dinner and stuff. And it was always a big deal. Steve Spurrier, if he didn't have a player, would fly in on Mondays when he was still coaching in college. But so
is there a chance that the narrative is different from what the voters are actually thinking here? Because it is now those awards are kind of hard to, because who are those awards voted on by? These committees, right?
Well, AP is the AP, but then the Walter Camp Award has they all have their own different committees. The Heisman voting block, those like 500.
Who are the Heisman voters?
It is members of the media. There's a handful, and I say a handful. There's like almost an equal amount in each region. Maybe in certain parts of the country there's less because there's just less people in that area. But it's broken up. So there's, just call it 125 in the Northeast, 125 in the Southeast, 125 in the West, 120. So that it breaks. And my numbers are approximate. And you were supposed to not only work somewhere, but but make it known that you cover and watch a lot of college football. So it's always interesting to me when people that don't watch college football still have, or don't watch it a lot, have a Heisman vote. But you just apply and they decide whether or not that you meet their qualifications. Ryan Edwards, who does the afternoon show at KOA, he has a Heisman vote. And so how does he, not only handle all his Broncos stuff, but watch enough college football on a Saturday? That's obviously, it's a big task, but the Heisman folks, and I'm not picking on Ryan by any means, but you have to say, if you're not like someone who covers college football, those people are straightforward. But if like I were to apply, I'd have to say, yeah, I'm in Boulder, I go up to CSU, I watch this many games, and I've just never applied. But It's people all across the country that'll vote, but all media members.
And yet, he's probably not going to be the number one draft pick.
Right. Even though he's number one on Mel Kiper's big board as the best overall player, Mel Kiper has him as the number one corner, number one receiver as well. But we know quarterbacks, this is the NFL's quarterback league, which is why I have yet to see any big board that has him projected higher than third. The reason that might change is if there's somebody that wants him so badly, they trade up to number one to get him.
And that person would probably want to play him both ways.
You would think, right?
Right.
You'd have to. That's the most fun conversation. It's going to be a loud one this weekend.
And yet he didn't lead the nation in receiving or interceptions or anything like that. Does that matter to you, Liv, or is it the fact that he's played both ways and being able to be excellent on both sides of the ball is so unprecedented?
That I think it's just so unique what he's doing, and the fact that honestly, more than him playing both positions well, the fact that his body has been able to keep up with his minutes that he's playing and the way in which that he plays. I just think he's too much of a freak of nature in the best way possible to not give him the Heisman at this point.
I'll clarify. There are up to 870 voters now, 145 from 6 regions. So they divided up into 6 regions, and you can understand geographically if you were to cut the country in 6. So yeah, 145 in each region.
Brandon, has there has there ever been anyone as good of odds to win it as Travis has? I mean, it seems like, everyone believes he'll win.
I think there's some years where it's been a big landslide. I remember being at the Heisman because I've been lucky enough to go 5 times. I also got this cool pullover one of the times. When Reggie Bush just blew Vince Young away, and Chris Fowler talked about it a lot, that the stunned look on Vince Young's face. Now, that was followed by a Texas upset of USC in the national championship at the Rose Bowl. But the gap there, and I'm going to look up to see some of the biggest landslide winners, but the odds certainly are in his favor. Ultimately, though, I do think Genty will get a bunch of first place votes. And that's kind of because a lot of times the winner has, of the 870 votes, 500, 600, 700 of those votes a lot of times. And so the gap feels like it's getting bigger. And I just saw literally a headline that said straw poll says that he's going to win easily. But then I lost it because I have too many tabs open.
I'm looking at an article here on ESPN. Champ Bailey was interviewed about Travis, and he says Travis is going to have to pick a side in the NFL.
Yeah, he said
and
that.
Champ Bailey led Georgia in receiving his senior year. He returned punts, he returned kickoffs, and he was a starting corner. And then he got to the NFL and realized how difficult it would be to do both. I was on the team when he played a little receiver. I was a receiver when he played a little receiver. And I was like, hey, man, I can do that. Throw me the ball. But they had a special package for Champ. But I think the conversation is going to be not can he do it physically, but mentally, because you spend so much time in meetings in the NFL, 4 hours a day in meetings with your group. So how do you split that up? So you're not going to go with the receivers all day. You're going to only go with them half a day. What are you missing? So it almost seems like you would have to just create a certain package for him and not say, here's the entire playbook, Travis. You got to learn this one. And here's the entire defensive playbook. You got to learn that one.
But can I ask you a question? Because you've brought this up a bunch, and I'm not trying to minimize the work day in the NFL. But we know that quarterbacks are in on Tuesdays anyway, even though that's typically your players off day. They're in there, if not all day, a good chunk of the day. They don't really get the Tuesday off. They have to stop by, look at what the coaches put into the Monday game plan, get into that, and then sit in the room with the quarterback's coach and whoever else is in that meeting room and just go through stuff. So what's stopping Travis Hunter from doing the same thing on a Tuesday?
Well, what are you
treating
gonna,
like a quarterback?
That's cool.
And then you're spending more time with the receivers coach, or you're spending more time.
That's Tuesday when no one's there.
Yeah, but the quarterbacks are there, so you can be in with the quarterbacks and go through all your receiver stuff.
But it's not just about learning something one day and then not doing it again the rest of the week. You got to do it on Wednesday. You do it on Thursday. You do it on Friday. You also work the kinks out of the playbook during the week. You put something in on Wednesday. You try it on the field versus some different looks that you think your opponent's going to do. And if it doesn't work, then you go in and watch it on film and tweak it a little bit. So every little concept is tweaked throughout the week, and it requires the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice, and then the meeting time after and the coaching to get it right. And so, he could come in on Tuesday and learn and get ahead of it. But then the nuance of the playbook that exists during the week, how are you going to get that?
Well, but I think it goes back to a time commitment. that was sort of the other point or the other question.
He'd have to stay late.
He's going to have to stay late.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the thing is we understand the NFL is a big time commitment. It's extremely, it's an extremely long day for coaches. Most of them get there 5 or 6 in the morning, and a lot of them will stay till 11 midnight. Are they there a little too much? Are they gaining more stuff by being there that early? It's kind of a system that has been unchanged, although Sean Payton notably arrives closer to 8 o'clock and he'll stay late and whatever.
Yeah, he's a night owl,
but
relative to sleep.
Yeah, but regardless, players, especially on Wednesdays and Thursdays, because your Friday practice typically, so today's Friday, they get off the field at 1:45 and they're cut loose and grabbing family at the airport, running errands, whatever, or getting ready to do whatever you need to do because you're leaving town tomorrow. We know Saturday has a walkthrough, but Friday you're cut loose. Wednesday and Thursday after you're on the field, you're back in the practice. There's, the media, there's a lot, depending on the schedule set up, and there's some sort of afternoon meeting. Then you go home. And in the pros, you're dealing with lots of times other obligations, certainly family and all that. I'm not saying he won't have that, but he doesn't have it off the jump other than best we can tell he's not a big party kid. He lives with his girlfriend and has lived with her for a couple of years.
He's got some video games to play.
Loves video games, but if right now he were on just one side of the ball and he leaves at 4:45 on Wednesday and Thursday, he can be playing video games at 5. But if he stays until 6 or 6:30 with whichever coach he didn't spend Wednesday or Thursday's meeting with, won't that make up for that time? It's a time management thing, but it's not. It's not an 8-hour commitment on a given day. In practice field, he's going to be bouncing back and forth anyway because you're going against scout team. They're not simultaneously. There's breaks, if I'm not mistaken, how the periods are set up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like the ones versus scout, and then you flip it on the other side. But it is a time management thing. You're right about that. It's not a talent thing. He has that talent, and we'll see how it plays out. But looks like he's going to be bringing home the Heisman. And
we got I've got the voting whenever if you want it. You can.
What do you mean?
Just the biggest landslide winners.
Okay.
There's a handful.
No, you can read it.
Well, so Joe Burrow, 93.8% of the first place.
That average quarterback?
Yeah. Right. And we're seeing it this year.
No, he's having a pretty good year. Can't lead his team to victory, but
next year he's going to have a bad year based on the trends we've seen. Right. Reggie Bush, who I'd mentioned, 91.8% of the vote over Vince Young. Troy Smith, landslide a year later, 91.63% of the vote. Marcus Mariota, 90.92%, and then it drops off to Baker, Ricky Williams, Charlie Ward.
Well, this Heisman is happening 30 years after the only others. Well, the CU Heisman winner, Rashan Salaam, right, 30 years ago, who committed suicide in 2016 and had advanced CTE. I was a teammate of his very briefly in San Francisco training camp.
Rashan
Salaam,
CU great.
Yeah, the running back at CU 30 years ago. And, by all accounts, a light in the darkness, a kind of guy who always brightened up the room, and a really generous guy, nice guy. The time I got to spend with Rashan Salaam was brief, but we had some pretty in-depth conversations. He was had bounced around the NFL a little bit. His NFL career wasn't as good as he had hoped, and he ended up in San Francisco. I think that might have been his last training camp there. But he was a good dude and met a really tragic end. So hopefully we can all remember Rashan Salaam in these coming days when we talk about Travis Hunter and what he's doing.
Yeah, and Sean Keeler in the Denver Post had a nice column this week where he reached out to Rashan's mom, who I believe is still in San Diego, which is where he's from, and said, man, she wishes you were around because of how much he would love watching what Travis Hunter is doing, seeing another buff there. And that's the cool thing about being at the Heisman is, and the 5 years I went, it was an SC winner, an OU, it was all those big schools. Notre Dame was there with Brady Quinn. And so their alums that have won Heismans are around. So, and they're more prominent that week. And there's obviously a million reasons why it's a bummer that Rashan's not around, but this is one because you're reminded of their greatness because they showed the previous winners from those schools. So Rashan will certainly get plenty of, we'll see highlight packages and all that over the next day or two, but it's just a bummer that he can't be there when Travis wins the award to hold up the trophy with Dion there potentially and anybody else that might be.
Is Coach Prime going to be there?
I imagine so. We almost always see. I've yet to remember a time coaches aren't there behind their player.
How surreal for him, for having been the man athletically, best athlete of his generation, the guy who was just always on an island. He was alone, as a athlete, nobody could touch him, and now he's leading these young men. How improbable it is 2 years ago too, when the CU Buffs were 1-11. to now have a Heisman.
Crazy.
And Shador's there too because he posted something being in New York. Yeah, he went.
Well, he should be a finalist, shouldn't he?
I agree. I think so. When you look at his completion percentage, his yards, I think he got slighted. But that also means very likely that there weren't split votes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he shouldn't have gotten a lot of second place votes or third place votes, perhaps ahead of Cam Ward or ahead of Dylan Gabriel, though Dylan Gabriel is quarterback of the best team in the country. So understand why he got some votes as well. I don't know how short Dylan Gabriel is. He's listed at 5'11", so I don't know what that means for him.
Well,
could be why he's in college for a 6th year.
Yeah. Well, Heisman Schmeisman says Shedeur Sanders when he's drafted number 1 overall.
He's gonna be drafted number 1 overall. And so the other thing, because you asked me what was kind of front of mind, and we know we're gonna get into Broncos and Garrett Bolles' new contract and all that. But I watched the whole Bill Belichick press conference yesterday at North Carolina, and it's easy to understand why he took that job and to see what Deion's done. And Bill's not going to do things exactly like Deion because Bill's not the same as Deion. And also his son is a defensive coach, not a Heisman candidate. And he doesn't have an adopted type son that followed him from Jackson State to Boulder like Travis Hunter. And so it was just fascinating, though, the idea of what Belichick can bring to the college game and understanding that if you can get the money right and the value of the Jordan brand, I think is going to be a bigger thing than people are maybe making credit for. Because, you've got teenage siblings and friends who are your age and younger that are, and look, there's guys in the 40s that still all about Jordans and buy lots of Jordans. We've got some upstave.
Sean Payton is like a Jordan head.
I'm wearing Jordans right now.
Yeah, you're a little kid.
If you're North Carolina and you've got no question, if you've got Carolina and Florida State, like these people don't know Bobby Bowden. The kids today don't know Bobby Bowden. They don't know Deion Sanders, the play. They
right.
Understand. And so if Bill Belichick and or one of his assistants shows up and the money is the same, why not go, I think I'm going to play in the league. I'm going to go with the guy that's won 6 Super Bowls. And I think the Carolina thing with Belichick's going to work better than people think.
$10 million a year he's going to get, so that's not too bad. And some millions allocated to his assistants and his strength coaches and all those guys. So
he has $16 million for his coaching staff.
$16 million, and there's some millions for the general managers now. They're going to have GMs. Andrew Luck is the general manager in Stanford,
and a Chapel Hill Country Club membership.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Those one of the incentives.
Yeah, those don't have. But what's funny about that is like, that only costs whatever the Chapel Hill Country Club wants to charge you.
Right.
Like they have if any of the 3 of us move there and we want to join, you got to get sponsored and you got to say, okay, it's whatever, $250,000, $150,000, but it doesn't cost them anything versus putting money in people's pockets. I mean, it's a nice bonus, but going back to kind of the Jordan thing, I think about, cause I ran into the new defensive coordinator at OU in Boulder this summer, and he's a little different because he has a personal relationship with Michael Jordan and through his dad in Charlotte and worked for them before he got into coaching. But we were talking about the Jordan specific shoes that OU, Michigan, North Carolina, and Florida get among the other schools, but they're at the top of the list. And you go online right now and you look up like Jordan for UNC, it's like $6,000 to $10,000. So when you can promise these kids shoes that they can only get there, they could buy
a pair of shoes. $6,000 to $10,000. No, I trust you.
But so you're saying on top of getting to wear the Jordan logo, which is cool to kids, you
also $10,000 shoes for free.
You're going to get them for free, and you're going to get a couple of them.
Yeah.
And if you're good enough, you're probably going to get a couple pairs that you can hook your friends up with.
And then you get Bill Belichick as your coach, who's trying to run a pro style system there. I heard him talking about it as far as the technique, the training, the nutrition, the classroom time, the coaching, all that stuff. He's trying to prepare these guys for the pros. All right, let's move to the pros. And before we talk about Garrett Bolles and the Broncos, what the heck is going on with the Niners, Liv, and your boy Debo? That was not pretty last night. What's going on there? Because the Niners seem to be imploding.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'm not even speaking about this from the perspective that I know something that nobody else does because I work with Debo. There is clearly a culture issue going on in San Francisco. I mean, when you have a player that leaves mid-game and just says, I don't want to play, and Kyle Shanahan really didn't have an explanation for it. It was just, he said he didn't want to play.
Devondre Campbell,
Yeah, there is clearly a culture issue going on there. And, you know, Debo earlier in the week tweeted, I want to get the ball more. He did, and he couldn't handle the heat. He had some drops for sure.
Why did he tweet that?
I think that I mean,
there's a lot of frustration.
I just think when you're watching the 49ers this season and you see how good this team should be and you see them on paper, I think some frustrations have taken over. I just think that is where this team is at. I mean, Kittle said the same thing in a post-game presser. I'm not getting the ball and I don't know why. Like, that's clearly a frustration across the board. Now, unfortunately for Debo, he tweeted it, and then very shortly after tweeting it, he had a very bad game or some bad drops. So that puts him in, of course, a tough position, especially with the fan base, people being frustrated with. The one thing I can say is Debo and I doing a podcast is not affecting his football performance. That's one of the most popular comments is, maybe stop podcasting. It takes 1 hour for him to literally talk about himself.
We talk about time
football.
management. He's not skipping practice or
Correct.
skipping meetings to talk to you.
I can tell you right
5
now,
or 6 at night.
He walks right into the house straight from practice. He gets himself dressed up. We're there. We film for an hour, and then I get out of his hair, and he's back into football world.
And it's not even practice because Tuesdays are off day. The days that you tape with him, he is just.
I think I'm literally just cutting into his 2K time.
Yeah,
where he could be playing 2K and enjoying whatever. That's where so him podcasting this season has nothing to do with it. I do for sure know that there is just frustrations, not just with Debo, but with everybody. I think when you have that much talent on a roster and it's not translating to wins, and then you see what happens last night with a player middle of the game doesn't want to play anymore, and that's his explanation, doesn't want to play, that to me, there is a lot of behind the scenes culture issues that this team has got to work through. And I just think it's taken over and mentally they're kind of all checked out, and it
just shows you how tenuous the hold is on a culture, because they were, the last couple of years, the crown jewel of the NFL. Like, look at how great they are. They've been as,
on paper,
several
fantastic.
Super Bowls, a bunch of NFC championships, cutting edge coaching. I mean, last year at this time, everybody was like, down on their knees for Kyle Shanahan and the Shanahan system and what it looked like. I mean, there was a bunch of people writing books about it, and like all of a sudden it looks like it's crumbling. People are probably calling for Kyle Shanahan's head in the Bay Area. How did it get this way this quick, Brendan?
I think in some ways he's not Kyle, but I guess Niners fans and thus Kyle are a product and spoiled by their own and spoiled by their own success, because they've been good but not been able to get over that hump and win that ring with the 2 trips, losing to the Chiefs twice. When you have them beat last year, you force overtime, or you're ahead in the game, and you go to overtime and all that, and you can't hoist that Lombardi trophy. Which
I think confidence was lost in Kyle Shanahan at that moment, because they go into overtime and he doesn't take the ball. He takes the ball.
Confidence from the fan base and the football
world? Teammates, or the team.
Maybe, except I just don't look. You were part of a team year over year, and you played for Kyle's dad for the bulk of your career. When things didn't necessarily go a certain way, and I guess you can't point to a singular moment maybe with Mike, other than, you can point to the Jay Cutler thing.
Yeah.
And did that? Do you think that was ultimately what we know the reasons why Mike and the Broncos parted ways when they did, but from a locker room standpoint, because that's different than why Mr. Bolin or Joe Ellis or Mike Shanahan didn't necessarily get along at the end. That's a whole different thing, I think.
Yeah.
But in the locker room, from the second that move was made through the next season.
Yeah. It definitely had an effect. And I think the older players, like I had Tom Nalen on, Dumb Jock, and he talked about that being like a kind of a what the hell moment. Like, what are you thinking, coach? And like, there's nothing we could do about it in that locker room. I mean, the decision was made. And actually the decision was made in the draft when they decided to trade up and draft Jay. And there is a history of, thinking that we are good, but we're not quite there yet. And the difference is that our quarterback, who is very good, could be better. And so we're going to replace that position. And it doesn't always work out when you do that. When you replace someone who is a leader in the locker room, who is playing well and has his team's respect. And that's what happened with Jake when he was benched. A lot of guys, saw how there is no loyalty, that any of us could get benched or cut at any time, or replaced at any time, no matter how good we played, or no matter how much of ourselves we give. And I think that, when it comes to these Niners now, though, there's some valid points being made about how much football they played every year. They've been either in the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. That's a lot of extra minutes on your football body for some guys who aren't getting any younger.
I feel like the 49ers falling short to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year created more frustration than motivation. Like, I think they were just frustrated, which
Yeah.
some teams can turn that frustration into motivation. And I think that's where the 49ers fell short, because when it rains, it pours. You've got Ricky Pearsall that gets shot. You've got Christian McCaffrey that's injured. It just felt like they had an opportunity probably week 3 or 4 to turn that frustration into something positive. But then it was just like they were getting hounded with personal things, off-field things. And that's another reason why watching a player leave a game because they just simply don't want to play has got to also be frustrating, because you've got Ricky who was shot. You've got people that are losing children this season. You've got people that are broken bones, surgeries. I'm sure Brandon Ayuk would love to be out there and he can't be. And so I just think they had frustration from falling short to the Chiefs, because that's a hump that they just simply can't get over right now, and then weren't ever able to turn that frustration into motivation because they were just getting berated with different personal things and injuries, and it feels like it just hasn't gone their way this season.
I think that's kind of the simplest way to look at it. Locker room strife is going to be magnified when you're not playing well. And so whether that's Debo tweeting this, I think even on Tuesday, did he do a press conference where he barely talked at his locker or press availability? Because I was watching it, I had the volume down, and I saw last night they're showing him at his locker and he's just kind of looking at the reporters. And then you follow that up with obviously a tough game on Thursday night. Not a great week there, but the losing is going to bring things to the surface or magnify them. But it is also straightforward. Less about X's and O's and more about Jimmy's and Joe's. If you don't have the best offensive player in football, and that's what Christian McCaffrey was, your offense isn't going to be as good. Then the kid backing him up has also been on the shelf, who was really good early. And Trent Williams in and out of the lineup, and obviously out of the lineup now, dealing with both personal stuff and an ankle.
Brock Purdy is not playing his best right now.
Nick Bosa, but that's
he had some drops last night though.
Yeah, the one on the money to Debo.
Yeah,
you got to catch that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not saying Debo did not have a good game. I'm just saying when you're looking at this season as a whole, Brock Purdy has looked way better in prior years. So I just don't think that
that's also a product of some of the injuries that are around him. So guys not, making plays around him.
But again, there's a lot of 49ers fans that have switched their tone because they said Brock Purdy doesn't need the weapons that he's got to be great. And then his weapons drop down and he looks very different. And now 49ers fans anyways are like, oh, maybe.
Well, what quarterback doesn't need weapons? I mean,
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes.
But Brock, okay, you have to admit,
did Peyton Manning win without guys making plays for him?
Brock has one of the most, last season specifically, from an offense perspective, from a defense perspective, from a coaching perspective, which again, none of which is his fault. He was put in a very good system, but I think you could probably argue Brock Purdy's got far more weapons than some of the quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm talking big name weapons. Bo Nix, we've been watching his weapons develop over time, but when you've got Kittle, CMC, Debo, those are Brandon Ayuk. Those are all
if you were to swap them out right now and put Bo Nix in a healthy Niners offense and Brock Purdy in this offense, you might get as much, if not more, from Bo Nix
right now.
No, if they're last year, Bo Nix today versus Brock Purdy in the playoffs last year. And look, Brock made those throws against the Lions. You cannot take that away from him. And that's always the biggest thing.
Those in the rain, too. He doesn't have very big hands.
Brock Purdy's amazing. I don't want to make it sound like I'm
Brandon Ayuk hurt all year. Christian McCaffrey basically hurt all year. Kittle on and off the injury report. Debo even has been banged up.
Yep. Yes.
Juwan Jennings was hurt and just came back.
Plus the Mason kid, plus Trent Williams, plus Nick Bosa, which is the other side of the ball.
And that's hard for a quarterback because the guys you practice with are the guys you want to be playing with. And when those guys go down, you're playing with guys that you don't have a lot of practice time with.
I'm just saying, my point in all of that was to say, I don't think anyone right now on this 49ers team, for whatever reason that may be, whether it's just the culture, it's the frustration, it's just a mental block that they're in, I don't think any 49ers player right now is playing their best football.
And one guy, and indicative of that is the fact that the guy didn't even want to go in the game. He's like, I'm out. And he went into the locker room and left.
And that speaks to culture, in my opinion.
It does.
Because why did he feel like he was able to eat? I get it. These are grown men. They'll do what they want to do, but
he was starting all year, right?
That is crazy.
And then Dre Greenlaw came back and he got put on the bench. And then Dre Greenlaw had to come out of the game.
So there's an ego situation going on.
I'm good. So he didn't believe that he should have been benched in the first place. And so he's like, no, screw you guys. I don't know the fact
check of this, but I did see a screenshot on Twitter. Again, this could be just some troll account that's making things up, but it was a screenshot of what appeared to be his Instagram before the game. Now, again, I need to do some more research, but if that is at all true, he basically alluded to the fact that like some team out there is going to get a really great player in me or something like that. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it was actually posted, but maybe that's how he feels.
I think some of that can just be about Devondre Campbell, that he's a malcontent.
He's 31 years old, which is, amazing that he's played this long with that sort of propensity to abandon his team in a moment when they need him. I mean, this was a crucial moment for the 49ers. They needed to win this game. They're in a tight battle. It's a field goal game. And he's like, nah, I'm not going in. It's against the ethos of everything you're taught as a football player. You're supposed to be there for your teammates no matter what and be ready to go when the guy in front of you goes down. So I think it is indicative of a problem there.
And if you saw the way the teammates reacted post-game, they were either totally dismissive of it, like, I don't know, whatever, or George Kittle like seemed legitimately pissed off about it. George, obviously, if not, one of the top team leaders, the top guy. You would maybe know that a little bit better, but George is a captain. He seems like the guy that brings everybody together. He started the tight end youth thing. Like, he's that guy. And so when George Kittle is critical of him, because sometimes guys are going through stuff, and your teammates may even know that. But so the only person I saw defend him was Josina Anderson's like, well, let's get all the facts.
Josina did, huh?
Yeah, let's get all the facts before we just cut this player.
There's no
or whatever.
facts. He left his teammates.
But if there's not something crazy going on in his personal life or
I guess
I'm saying if that's the case, but based on how they reacted,
it doesn't seem like that's
because
the case.
I go back to it's not apples to apples, but 2 years in a row, the Avalanche lost Valenchuskin in the playoffs, and 2 years ago, and I get they were coming off a cup. They were a little more supportive than last year. And we understand these are problems with his substance use. Last year, they were a little less support. They've been supportive since he's come back. But the team is like, we've already been down this road. And so if they have an understanding of who Devondre Campbell is as a person, and they're not totally, other than they haven't seen it, but not totally surprised that this is the guy that chose to walk off in the middle of the game, then that probably speaks to more about his relationship with his teammates and less about the culture that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Jed York, and that team is about. But we do know that it's going to get loud. And I had Bill Belichick high on the list of available coaches for the NFL, understandably, although maybe the league didn't. We know Mike Vrabel's up there. We understand Ben Johnson is for some teams. If Kyle gets fired by the Niners, and I don't think Jed York's going to fire him, he will jump to the top of the list ahead of all of those people, including Mike Vrabel.
Well, that loss dropped them to last place in the NFC West. The Niners 6-8. But let's move to the AFC. Let's move to the AFC West, and let's move to the Denver Broncos matchup with the Indianapolis Colts here at home. The Colts, underdogs, 4-point underdogs. Broncos favored by 4. The Colts are right now 6-7 in the AFC South. A game essentially, or a couple games behind the Houston Texans, but the Houston Texans taking on the Miami Dolphins this weekend, and so some implications here. What are your thoughts going into this matchup, Liv? Are you thinking the Broncos are going to roll like I do, or are you a little worried?
I'm not worried, but this Colts team is not one to let your guard down at all. Don't take your foot off the gas. And what I worry about is I think naturally when you have a bye week, some of your momentum that you were riding for so long starts to kind of taper down a little bit and things get a little quiet, and it kind of takes everybody, even at me as a fan. I'm like, oh, I get to watch the Broncos this weekend. Like, it feels like it's been so long since we've watched this team play football. And so I think naturally with a bye week, you can lose a little bit of momentum. And the last quarterback I would want to let my guard down against is Anthony Richardson in this Colts team, because I just think they're one of those sneaky teams because they're not super great and they're not super bad. So they kind of are in that middle ground where at any given moment they could have a really bad performance or they could do really, really great things. And so I think those are the sneaky teams you have to worry about, where it's like, of course, the Broncos will go into a game against the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Bengals and know they have to bring their best. When you play a team like the Colts, you're like, we're better than this team. We've got a better record. Bo Nix is playing better than Anthony Richardson, but that does not discredit how sneaky good this Colts team can be in the right situation and with the right momentum. So again, the bye week is the only thing that I'm like, ooh, I really hope they're able to pick up where they left off with that momentum, because a Colts team led by Anthony Richardson to me could be scary.
I think that Anthony Richardson probably has some Jameis Winston qualities in that he has lots of ways he can beat you. He runs way better than Jameis, obviously, but big arm. Maybe biggest arm in the NFL. If you had a throwing contest in terms of hucking the ball down the field between Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and I guess whoever else you'd want to throw in there. Probably
Mayfield, did you know that Baker Mayfield has the longest recorded in-game throw in the history of the NFL?
Yarded though from
just like
launch
the
point
distance.
to what is it?
It was like
70?
some late game, like Hail Mary type of. Yeah, it was like 70 something.
Yeah, the air yard. That's pretty
That's
wild.
insane,
You would think that John Elway from back in the day would have just thrown it, or
Baker, man.
Shout out Baker.
or Patrick, or certainly Josh Allen. But so Anthony Richardson can beat you two ways, and he's a guy that can averages, a lot of yards on the ground, but can get you 60, 70, 80 yards in a game. And so I asked Vance Joseph yesterday, because you played Baltimore, which has a 1A running back in Travis Henry, and I think Jonathan Taylor's still in most people's top 5, top 7 of a tailbacks they would want on their team, and his effectiveness catching the ball as well. Did playing the Ravens, even though it's not the same offense, that prepare you for, hey, we have to account for the quarterback as a runner versus the Falcons, where you're not worried about Kirk Cousins running? And he's like, yeah, yes and no, because they just run so differently and their offenses are so different. But Richardson is only completing like 50% of his passes. That being said, he has talent with Pittman and Downs.
They're sneaky. I just think they're sneaky. That's
Pierce,
all.
And Pierce.
They're sneaky. That's
and
all.
this is also
Speaking of
surprising
talent, how would you like to get through the holidays?
Organic as hell.
That is what we're speaking of. I was going to make a point about their O-line, but I'll do that
Well, hold on to that thought.
Okay.
But how would you like to get through the holidays without having to make your mortgage payment? Well, go to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you refinance your home and not have to make any payments until February.
I'm pointing at the QR code.
Oh, yeah, that QR code there. Scan that QR code.
BK doesn't know personal space.
Yeah, hey, whoa, what are you
I needed to
reaching for here, buddy?
Make sure that I pointed farther away here. I should
Look, Trusted Americans, salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate, guys, and lower your monthly payments. And right now, they'll cover the cost of your appraisal, which is basically a $650 value. They'll cover that. That'll be free. Go to trustedamerican.com. Scan that QR code where BK's finger is shaking.
And bent all
see
weird.
how much they can save you today.
I don't
right.
know if I help Trusted American or hurt him with that.
Tell
that
me-
was creepy, honestly.
Tell me more. Yeah, I don't want your hand
I think people
anywhere.
are really
Well,
curious
that was a
now
little
about
close.
the QR code.
Maybe next time
so
we'll flip it so that the QR code's, well, I guess it'd be in
no,
between
keep it
us,
as
but-
far away from BK as
Yeah,
possible.
I guess so. But check out trustedamerican.com.
Yeah, check them out. So you were making a point about the O-line.
Well, we know they've got Quentin Nelson, who is headed to Canton. The guy's an all-pro every year. He's been in the league just about, a Pro Bowler. He and Zach Martin have been the two best guards in the NFL in the last decade. And we know he's good. But the rest of their O-line, this surprised me, because you go through and their offense is average to below average. They barely hold on to the ball. They're next to last in the league in time of possession. They're 23rd in yards per game. They're 26th in passing yards. They've turned the ball over a bunch. I think that's more Richardson than Flacco. But Richardson has 1,500 passing yards. Flacco with those couple starts and having to fill in when Richardson got dinged up, 1,100 yards. So despite Richardson being a young quarterback, and we know that Sean Payton will tell you, sacks are often the quarterback's fault as much as the O-line, if not more so.
Yeah.
And that almost always feels like a dig at Russ. But between Richardson, a young quarterback, and Flacco, a statue, the opposite of Richardson in terms of running.
Yeah.
And Joe doesn't take lots and lots and lots of sacks, but he's still vulnerable. They're only seventh in terms of, they're the seventh best in the league in terms of protecting the quarterback.
Yeah,
The
Anthony
Broncos
Richardson's only been sacked 9 times, which I thought that number was going to be a lot higher.
For sure.
But he's completing under 50% of his passes. He's only started 13 games in the NFL, and he's only started 13 games in college. He is not an experienced quarterback. I think the Denver Broncos defense could feast on Anthony Richardson and make this a blowout. I really do think the Broncos could blow out the Colts if they're able to collapse the pocket and put a lot of pressure on
I
Anthony.
think the Broncos could blow out any team. It's just a matter of
Well, then what makes
They
you
gotta
think they're
get
not
their-
going to do this? Because to me, like Sean Payton, relative to preparing his team for every scenario, has been pushing all the right buttons with these guys for weeks. I mean,
the
they've
bye week. That's the only
but
reason.
the Colts are coming off a bye too, and their head coach is a guy named like Shane, who looks like he works
Steichen.
at
Why did you guys say his name so
He said it like that.
deflated
Shane.
and rude?
I'm not picking on a guy named
Like
Shane.
what? Leave Shane alone. What did Shane do
I
to
think
y'all?
Shane
Well,
maybe
just
been
look at
his-
Shane. He just doesn't look like an NFL head
Shane.
coach.
I
Is
don't know
that-
if that's true. I think Jonathan Gannon, his old colleague from Philly, doesn't look like a head coach.
To me, I look at Shane. I'm like, do you work at? He looks like he works at a gas
What does
station.
a head coach look like? Do they need a little bit of a
They're
dad
like Mike
bod and
McCarthy,
they need to be a little
the,
older
Mike
A little
McCarthy.
bit,
and a
yeah.
little bit of a beer
Or
gut
a little
going
bit more
on?
of like a defining
Kyle
presence. or
Shanahan
maybe
doesn't look like a coach. Kyle Shanahan's got now kind of a mullet going. He wears.
He kind
a
of looks
flat
like Nate.
Yeah, if
You guys are similar.
if you walked into
the same age.
if you walked into a skate shop in Santa Clara,
He's
and
going
Kyle
with a
was
flat-
behind the counter with
flat
the flat
brim.
brim
Yeah.
and a hoodie, and
not a lot of flat brim head coaches out there.
No, Kyle's at the forefront there. But okay, you can pick on Shane Steichen. I'm pretty sure he invented the tush push, and he was credited with
Oh, is that right?
with being the key.
Does
to
that make him like a little pervy?
Well, I think if you want to name it that, I don't know what it's called in the Philly playbook.
You know what? We're all gonna just push each other's butts.
But that being said, when he takes the job in Indy after leading Philly as the play caller to the Super Bowl and unlocking, I think Jalen Hurts' best performances and clearly made that work. And we know that even with Kellen Moore there now, it's taken a step back from where it was passing wise. But with what they're able to do using Jalen Hurts as a runner, Anthony Richardson's a more talented runner, more talented athlete. So the idea that the two of them were paired together, I was excited about when he went number 4 last year overall to the Colts, thinking, okay, pairing him with Steichen. Now he got hurt so early, we didn't really get to see anything last year.
Right.
And this year we know it's been up and down, but he seems eager or willing to want to get better. And I don't think the Colts are going to make a coaching change. I don't think they should. But if it falls off the rails and they finish 6-11, Irsay may get jumpy. That being said, I like the pairing of Steichen and Jalen Hurts, even if you don't like the name Shane or how he looks.
I don't like the name Shane. Look, they are 6-7. They lost the first game of the year to the Texans. They lost the second game of the year to the Packers. Then they beat the Bears. Then they beat the Steelers, 27-24. Then they lost to the Jags. Then they beat the Titans. Then they beat the Dolphins. Then they lost to the Texans. They lost to the Vikings. They lost to the Bills. They beat the Jets. They lost to the Lions. And then in their last game, they beat the Patriots 25-24.
See, I'm just saying, like, to beat the Steelers based on how great the Steelers, the Colts to me are a team that could shock you and have a really great game.
That was pre-Russell, though. That was pre-Russell.
But you're right. They did beat
Russell.
They beat the Steelers without him. We got a bunch of comments in a row from Rodney Garcia, but one I think is at least worth touching on because you can go back to the Browns game is where he's concerned about VJ adjusting to the way Coach Steichen is going to call the game. And Rodney Garcia feels like Vance hasn't done a great job in terms of in-game adjustments. Certainly not in the Browns game.
Well, that was, I think, a personnel issue. Yeah, and he mentions that. Rodney asked the question: Would you prefer to have Damari Mathis out there or Chris Abrams-Drain? And then of course Levi Wallace is a question mark. And Levi Wallace was absolutely getting torched in that game against Jerry Jeudy. And was it an issue of he didn't know the playbook? Was he not engaged in it? Did he not watch enough film? Did he not want to be out there? I mean. What happened?
Sorry.
You okay?
Are you all right?
Something in my sweatpants just poked me.
Oh.
I just got stabbed on air.
You literally went, ow.
You
guys didn't get to see
it.
that.
That hurt very bad.
This is my understanding. They're not confident in Damari Mathis's ability to grasp everything that they're doing defensively in terms of scheme-wise and stuff.
And how hard is it, man? It's man or zone.
I understand, but you'd say Levi Wallace, who had 70 starts before he even got here.
Yeah, I know.
Now throw a couple more in.
70, that's wild. He didn't look like
including 9 last year. He looked like a rookie.
Yeah,
that was just running around. Chris Abrams-Drain comes in as a rookie. His first game action, and unfortunately, I want to say that his first recorded stat, I guess we got to look and see if he got any half tackles, is a PI in the end zone, and that's the first time you hear his name called. But he played, I believe, a dozen snaps, and I think they were happy in general with how he played. We know that like Audric Estime, like Devon Vele, and I'm forgetting, Jonah Ellis, they had a higher grade on Chris Abrams-Drain. They had a 3rd-round grade on their board on Chris Abrams-Drain, even though he went to maybe one of the worst schools in the history of the world in Missouri, there in Columbia. They like his talent, and they got him in the 5th when they had a 3rd-round grade on him. So I'll be surprised if we don't see him start. And as I mentioned last week to Liv when I had heard this, and it's now kind of other people put it out there too, but I don't think we'll see. Not only will we not see Riley Moss, who hasn't practiced yet this week, we're probably not seeing him Thursday either against the Chargers, so we won't see him
playoff.
No, I think we'll.
Are
see
you
him
all right? Did you get shocked again?
I think we'll see him against the Bengals. Maybe
shit.
it's the corduroy.
What you just say?
Bengals?
That's actually the name of their cheerleaders, I think. The Bengals.
Benny Gals?
Bengals.
Did you make that up?
I did not make that up.
Yes, he did.
I did just realize she's wearing corduroy pajamas, though. So there's.
Okay, these are not flipping
wears
pajamas.
she wears a
This is an
fancy
aloe
jacket.
sweat set.
Aloe.
Yeah,
Like
aloe.
like soothing.
Aloe vera?
Yeah, it's like
Is it good for sunburns?
Yeah, it's great for sunburn. We're on the same page. And yes, we have kids, little kids.
Yes.
They
Our
would not
children
get that
laugh at
jacked.
those jokes.
Well, they
okay.
your
Similar.
children. Yes, I would expect children to laugh at dad jokes.
Yes, they love
Me,
jokes about
not so
ointment.
much.
They love
Right.
ointment. Any ointment jokes. Or,
Yeah.
That is the
or treatment.
grossest word on the planet.
I thought
Ointment?
moist was.
I thought moist.
Moist ointment is pretty
Ooh,
bad.
Moist. Wait, we should call our show
You know what?
the
No,
Moist Ointment Show.
no, we shouldn't. You know what other word is gross? Scalp.
Why?
Really?
Say it.
Scalp.
What about bald? That's his dumbest scalp.
What
Like
about
neither.
follicles?
Yeah. You don't like.
Ew.
Ryan?
That's
What about
foul.
moist ointment follicles?
Okay.
Moist ointment on your follicles.
That's too far. That is gross.
It's a bridge too far.
No, truly, I do think the Broncos will win this, though. I'm just saying that I think it could be closer than it should be.
Are you concerned about the cornerback situation? And again, I think we'll see Chris Abrams-Drain, not Damari Mathis, starting. And I guess I don't know how they use Levi Wallace in that regard. Because Damari has come in, and we saw him in the other day in a dime situation, made a good play against the Browns. But that's obviously going to be limited how much they use that package because of just the way formations work.
And you know, a lot of ways you can help those corners by putting pressure on the quarterback, you know, and making things difficult for him and making him make some bad decisions. If he has time to sit back there and pick guys apart, he's going to go after those. Well, I don't know if Anthony Richardson is experienced enough to kind of, you know, to sit down and think about where the weaknesses are and how to go after. I mean, I'm sure he's being briefed all week as to where to go with the ball, but in the moment of truth, when the chaos is unfolding, the experienced quarterbacks are able to understand that better and understand where to go with the football. You know, VJ is going to try to make things difficult, disguise what you're doing, you know, look like you're bringing 6 guys and only 4 come to drop out. And so it's going to be interesting to see. One of the things that could affect the Broncos, I saw this an interesting stat. The Broncos point differential by quarter. In the first quarter, they're minus 17. And then in the subsequent 3 quarters, they're plus. They're plus 33 in the second quarter, plus 14 in the third, and plus 25 in the fourth. What do you think accounts for that slow start that the Broncos are getting this season?
Maybe, well, early on, we know just getting into what was comfortable with the offense in general, not just what Bo's comfortable with, but what's working. And I think that we've seen they have had better starts of late because that's an average going back to the start of the year. But it also kind of counteracts Rodney's point. Their defense has been good, especially you think about the second half against the Chargers. I understand they may have taken their foot off the gas a bit. The Ravens is the only game where the second half made things worse. Like they went in with that weird momentum swing right before the half, and then it steamrolled right after halftime. But
any chance that Sean Payton's first 15 plays aren't that sweet?
Maybe so. Though you go back to the Bucs game, you look at the Falcons game. There have been stretches.
Yeah.
Even I guess against the Browns they were down, right? And I guess at that point, are you talking to Joe Lombardi and Pete Carmichael and saying, "Hey, what should we be doing?" And Davis Webb and saying, "What you guys have ideas for my first 15?"
Yeah,
I don't think that's really how Sean approaches it.
No, he's not asking anyone for ideas relative to the first 15, but I think he's doing a pretty good job. The Broncos are 8-5 right now, which has surpassed most everybody's expectations. The Sharks in Las Vegas had them at 5.5, right?
I bet it up to 6.5, and I feel like a dummy. I should have put it at 7.5.
Should have put it at 8. Should have put it at 10.5.
Maybe 10.5. That might be living on the edge.
So let me talk about this scenario. The Broncos hosting the AFC Championship game against the Baltimore Ravens. I sounded
about that.
He did
Did
a little
I?
at the end.
Nah, I don't think so.
You know how he does the
right.
right.
Look, people, the
That's
Broncos
exactly what it sounded like
the
to me.
AFC Championship game. So this is how it would happen.
Scenario.
The Broncos win out.
Okay.
And end up being the number 5 seed. The
Okay.
Ravens lose a couple games and end up being the 7 or 6 seed.
Which is possible.
The Steelers end up, winning that division, and then both the Broncos and the Ravens win both games and end up playing in the AFC Championship game, and it happens here at Empower Field in Denver, Colorado, the beautiful state, the beautiful
That would
city.
be crazy.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
the Broncos will have the easiest path in week 1 because if you get all 3 of those teams want that fit. Well, the Ravens want to win their division.
Right.
But you want the 5th seed because you want to go to Houston. You want the Texans at this point. If your choices are to go to Houston, potentially go to Arrowhead if the Chiefs stumble, go to Buffalo, which who knows what that's going to look like January 12th, 13th weather-wise, or go to Pittsburgh or Baltimore, you definitely want to go to Houston.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to pick your poison because you're going to have to go to one of those places
Buffalo or
next
Kansas
week.
City
Buffalo,
or maybe
KC,
Pittsburgh.
or Pittsburgh the next week, and that's going to be a challenge.
Probably Pittsburgh is the one you want to go of those three, right?
100%.
Or do we feel like Kansas City is ripe for the taking? Do we feel like Kansas City's a little afraid that the Broncos are like, knocking on the door, like they got out of that last one with a win and shouldn't have, and they're afraid to see the Broncos in the playoffs?
Well, and in this scenario, the Broncos will have beaten the Chiefs in the final game of the year.
Yes.
Now, let's see what happens with the Bills and Lions, but the Chiefs may be playing for absolutely nothing. And so even though they will come out in the first half and play Patrick and Travis and those guys, if they've got that number 1 seed locked up, then we will see Carson Wentz in the second half very likely, and a winnable opportunity for the Broncos, who will need that game almost certainly to jockey for that 5th spot. And so that kind of takes that off the board, though. If the Broncos beat them and they're beating mostly Carson Wentz in the game and a lot more Xavier Worthy than Hopkins and no Kelsey, it's all Noah Gray out there, then the Chiefs aren't even looking at that. They're going back to the loss at Arrowhead, or the win at Arrowhead, the almost loss. But they're kind of scrapping that and saying, okay, we knew what we were doing in week 18, game 17. So would you rather go to Arrowhead? I think you want to go to Pittsburgh because of the story, but maybe if the Steelers are hosting, you're not in as big a hurry. And I just don't think you want to go to Buffalo, not this year. And I don't think you want to go back to Baltimore. So would you rather go to Kansas City over Buffalo, Baltimore, or Pittsburgh?
I'd say I'd rather Kansas City or Pittsburgh. Would be my 2 answers.
Same
But you'd rather go to Kansas City rather than Buffalo? I don't have a problem with that. They've shown they can almost win there, and they play the Chiefs tough a lot.
And the Chiefs have been winning by scraps.
Yeah. Do you think their luck's going to run out, or they're just
God, I hope so.
Or are they just so good at winning those games that they're actually conserving their energy for the real fight, which is happening next month? And
You sound like a Nuggets fan. That's what I'm convincing myself.
the
I'm like, we're
Jamal
playing
Murray
bad because we're preserving
Resting.
our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Muhammad Ali, who would like be on the ropes and just kind of take and just dodge it. He's not. He's letting the opponents punch themselves out and lose all their energy.
Yeah, the
then he
Chiefs have they're 2
That's how I
games
fight too.
clear. With Buffalo losing to the Rams, the Chiefs are 2 games clear. So if nothing happens, if Buffalo beats Detroit this week, which makes things more interesting with Philly, but they have that tiebreaker because in conference, Detroit is 8-1 and Philly 7-2. So that a loss to the Bills doesn't drop Detroit below Philly because it's an AFC loss. Could the Chiefs just be chilling in that game? Because they're at the Browns this week.
Yep.
Texans
Chilling.
in KC next week. Steelers in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, Saturday, Wednesday.
It's also one of those things, though. If they got the bye locked up, like
a lot's gonna come down. I don't think any of us expect the Chiefs to lose in Cleveland this week, although we know what Jameis is capable of.
Yeah,
and Myles Garrett for that matter,
and Jared Judy
and Shelby Harris. But assuming they beat the Browns, let's just go with that. If the Bills lose, then the Chiefs are 3 games up on the Bills. And I guess it makes the Steelers game a little more interesting, but they're going to have to lose twice. So if they were to lose to the Steelers, they would then have to beat the Broncos. Either way.
Well, the Broncos got to take care of business this weekend. Some have called it the biggest Broncos game since Super Bowl 50.
Wouldn't you say that last year's game against the Patriots was because they had to win to stay alive for their playoff life?
But they lost, so it was like that.
Right, but going into the game, you
Yeah.
had to stay alive to even have a chance. We understand the math wouldn't have mattered, even if they had
Did you sit on that thing again?
They would have lost the tiebreakers and all that, but they would have at least stayed alive.
Yeah.
So I would argue that was a bigger game to that point. You could also go back to when VJ had them at, were they 7-6 or 6-6? They go to Cincy.
Yeah.
And they lost that game to Jeff Driscoll and the Bengals.
Oh, Jeff Driscoll. Every game that's big, because we're in it in the moment, feels like the biggest game ever. But let's, before we get out of here, I want to talk about Garrett Bolles. Garrett Bolles and a huge contract extension, the GB zone. How many years? How many millions?
4 years, $82 million.
Wow.
And was that a hometown deal? Maybe. It makes him the 6th highest paid tackle. If he hit the market this year, would he become the highest paid left tackle? I don't know, but Garrett's been really good. He's got a chance to be a Pro Bowler this year, or first, second team all pro. We'll see how it shakes out. Cause we understand we hear his name, number 72 holding, and there's still like plenty of angst or PTSD, but his pressure rate's been great. His grades by places like PFF have been really good. And we know that because they're one of the least sacked teams in the league.
Yeah.
So he's not getting smoked.
Yeah.
And he has really turned into a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. And knowing that you're going to have more flexibility, despite having $30 million on the books for Russ next year in dead money, you're going to get more room. You're going to have to figure out what you're doing with Cortland. I think that's probably next on their list. You can wait to pay Benito. You can secure Garrett, and that gives you a lot more flexibility in the draft in case you want to trade up to get an Ashton Genty, or if there's the tight end from Michigan, tight end from Penn State, and you want to make sure that you're not like, oh, man, we need a left tackle because we let Garrett walk.
Right.
And we have to draft one and find a vet to start ahead of him potentially if it's not a day one starter. So I like this move. Garrett's been good. He's been a good teammate. Has he loved maybe necessarily when Mike McGlinchey gets paid all that money to come in, and Mike wasn't necessarily great last year?
Yeah.
Ben Powers got paid really well. I don't think he had any problem with how Quinn
So
got
is he
paid.
making more than those guys now with this?
Probably
more
six
than
highest paid
McGlinchey, right?
tackle. I guess he has to be, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
$20 million a year. So
Yeah.
82, it's 20.5 a year.
And what's McGlinchey making?
Well, his was 84 over 5. So
Okay. Well, not as much as Garrett.
yeah.
Somebody's got more money
But
now.
what do you think about them saying? Because you asked me, and either of y'all, what do you think about them saying Garrett's played well enough here? We've had him for 2 years. Zach Streif knows how to work with him. Because Garrett even talked about it yesterday. We understand that his learning disabilities, or learning disability, I don't want to, but have made it a challenge for coaches to communicate. Mike Munchak and Chris Cooper kind of unlocked how to get through to him. I think working with Dalton Reisner a lot helped. Now Ben Powers, I'm sure, has picked up that slack and understanding that kind of shorthand communication. And do you like that they went ahead and got the skill down?
I think he's playing very well. I think, like you were saying, left tackles don't grow on trees. You're not going to find a guy like him out in the free agent market. And if you want to draft the guy, not only are you using up a draft pick that you could use for someone else of need, but you don't know if that's going to pan out either. You don't know how these guys are going to go, but you know what you have in Garrett Bolles. He's been relatively healthy. I know he had an injury a couple years ago, but he's playing really well. And the guys like him, and he's a good dude, and he wants to be a Bronco. He loves it here.
Yeah.
He talks about that all the time.
And he weathered the storm.
Yeah,
he weathered
did.
the losing storm,
Exactly.
which is like you almost have to. And I think that there's other players that would have also weathered the storm had Sean Payton kept them around. But there's a lot of respect that I have for him for constantly showing up and being so proud to represent Broncos country, because he's been on the journey with the rest of us of just like, holy cow, this is exhausting. So it's almost like he's getting rewarded for pushing through the darkness.
Yep. And, Bo Nix has not got sacked a lot. Like, they're protecting the football. And I think that goes, a lot of that is because of Garrett Bolles and the job he did. So props to Garrett for, the rich get richer. He's going to be here for the next 4 years. Well, how many of those are guaranteed, BK?
40 million is guaranteed. So essentially
Couple
2-3 years. And then we'll see. And Garrett's older. We know he was older. He was 25 when he got here as a rookie. He's had a non-traditional journey and has talked about it. That's why all of his off-field work and why he was the Walter Payton Man of the Year last year was with juveniles that are in the justice system for criminal activity and helping them get through it, because Garrett experienced a lot of that as a kid, being a knucklehead, being kicked out of his house, being taken in by another family, making his way through junior college, getting to Utah, and coming out the other side as a first-round pick. Now, you could have traded up and gotten Patrick Mahomes in that same draft. It's worth noting. But they stuck there and got Garrett. It was Vance Joseph's first draft. It was obviously John Elway making that pick. And it's proven to be a really good pick because he's going to go down as one of the most games played in franchise history if he can stay healthy. He's been
longest tenured left tackle in Broncos history.
Yeah, I mean, you were lucky enough to play with Ryan Clady for a little bit.
Yep.
Who's, I think, for everybody's money, with apologies to Gary Zimmerman, and we know he spent so much time in Minnesota, the most talented left tackle. Injuries robbed Ryan Clady of a gold jacket because that's how good he was. And I remember, because you remember his rookie year when the Cowboys came in, and DeMarcus Ware put on a clinic in front of the Hard Knocks cameras, and it had just come on the heels of Mario Williams beating up a little bit. And so Ryan Clady, first round pick, highest lineman that Mike had ever drafted and all that. And I know we're getting sidetracked here, but he got beat up for a week. And then after that, Ryan Clady, when he was on the field, was like his rookie year, he gave up half a sack or something.
He was
crazy.
excellent.
So it's been fun to see Garrett Bolles become the next closest thing.
Yep. All right, before we get out of here, guys, let's give our Broncos predictions and scores for this game. Brandon, Krisztal, who you got?
I like the Broncos to win this game 31-23.
Oh, okay. All right. Liv, what do you think? Oh, I know this is tough.
27-24.
Whoa,
Are you
close
picking
one.
a team?
Who's going to win?
Broncos.
So you're saying Colts cover. She likes Colts cover.
Yeah.
gonna bet?
I don't think the Colts are going to cover. I think this is not going to be very close. I think it's Broncos win 30-13.
Whoa, all right.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I think.
Okay.
The drama.
What do you guys think? Well, time will tell. Game is Sunday. Today's Friday. This has been another off-field. She's Liv Moods.
I am.
He's Brandon Krisztal.
We'll see you on game day, post game.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep. We'll be on here on game day and follow us on post game. We're going to have a post game show reacting to the Broncos win. Huge win. That's what we hope. All right. This has been Off Field. We'll see you guys later. We're out of here.